What happens when a famous Hollywood actor mocks a 10-year-old black kid's dream of becoming an actor at a major studio audition? The room falls silent as the established star cruelly tears apart the child's confidence in front of everyone. But what no one realizes is that the man sitting quietly in the corner, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, is none other than Black Panther star Chadwick Boseman. And when he stands up, the entire studio is about to witness something they'll never forget. Marcus woke up before his alarm went off, his heart already racing with excitement and nerves. Today wasn't just any ordinary Saturday. It was his first real Hollywood audition. At 10 years old, Marcus Johnson had spent countless hours practicing lines in front of his bedroom mirror, recreating scenes from his favorite superhero movies, especially Black Panther. His room was a testament to his dreams. Movie posters covered nearly every inch of wall space, with Black Panther taking center stage above his bed. Action figures, carefully arranged on shelves, stood like silent guardians watching over him. His most prized possession sat on his desk, a worn screenplay his mother had bought him from a second-hand bookstore. Marcus lived with his mom Sandra in a modest apartment in South Los Angeles. Since his father's passing 3 years ago, Sandra had worked 2 jobs to keep their little family afloat. But she never let their circumstances dim Marcus's dreams. Every night after her late shift at the hospital, she'd run lines with him, no matter how exhausted she was. This morning was different though. Sandra had taken a rare day off to drive Marcus to the Warner Brothers studio. The audition was for a small role in an upcoming family movie, but to Marcus, it might as well have been for the next Marvel blockbuster. He'd been chosen from thousands of online submissions, one of only 20 kids selected for an in-person audition. As Marcus got dressed in his best button-down shirt and dress pants that Sandra had carefully ironed the night before, his hands trembled slightly. He could hear his mom in the kitchen, humming gospel tunes while making his favorite breakfast, chocolate chip pancakes shaped like stars. It was their tradition for important days. "Your daddy would be so proud," Sandra had whispered last night as she tucked him in. Marcus held onto those words now, drawing strength from them as he practiced his lines one last time in the mirror. Little did he know that this ordinary morning would lead to an extraordinary encounter that would change not just his life, but the lives of everyone present at the audition. The Warner Brothers studio looked like a fortress of dreams to Marcus. Towering gates opened to reveal a maze of buildings, each one potentially holding the key to someone's Hollywood breakthrough. Sandra squeezed his hand as they walked through security, her hospital badge tucked away in her purse, replaced today by a visitor's pass that read Guardian. The audition was being held in Studio 7, a massive warehouse-like building transformed into a professional casting space. As they stepped inside, the air conditioning hit them with a blast of cold air that made Marcus shiver, or maybe it was his nerves. The room was already filling with other children and their parents, all clutching scripts and dreams just as tightly as Marcus held his. Professional lighting equipment surrounded a small stage area where each child would perform their scene. Cameras were set up, their lenses like unblinking eyes ready to capture every moment. Rows of chairs faced the stage, and behind them sat a long table where the casting directors would soon take their places. What caught everyone's attention, though, was James Sterling, the lead actor of the film, lounging in a corner with his feet propped up on an expensive leather chair. Sterling was known for his roles in action movies and had recently transitioned into family films, though the gossip magazines often questioned whether this was by choice or necessity after several box office failures. He scrolled through his phone, occasionally glancing up at the arriving families with what could only be described as barely concealed disdain. His presence wasn't required at these auditions, but he'd insisted on being involved in casting his young co-star. The studio had agreed, hoping to smooth over his reputation for being difficult on set. Other child actors were already warming up, some pacing while muttering lines under their breath, others sitting quietly with headphones on, trying to stay focused. Their parents huddled in small groups, sharing stories of agents and acting classes, previous auditions and almost breaks. Marcus found a quiet corner with Sandra, pulling out his carefully highlighted script pages. The scene they'd be performing was simple. A young boy discovering he had supernatural powers while doing homework. Marcus had practiced it hundreds of times, but now, in this room full of professionals and competitors, the words seemed to swim before his eyes. A casting assistant, clipboard in hand, began organizing the children into groups. The atmosphere grew tenser with each passing minute. Parents straightened their children's clothes one last time, whispered final words of encouragement. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and somewhere in the building, a door slammed, making several kids jump. What no one noticed was another figure who had slipped quietly into the back of the room, a man in a baseball cap and sunglasses, choosing to remain unobtrusive as he observed the scene unfolding before him. He'd come to meet with studio executives about an upcoming project, but something about the energy in this room had drawn him to stay. The first few auditions went smoothly. Each child took their turn, some stumbling over lines, others delivering them with practiced precision. James Sterling watched with growing impatience, making loud sighs and checking his watch repeatedly. The casting director, a woman named Patricia, tried to maintain a positive atmosphere despite Sterling's obvious displeasure. Then it was Marcus's turn. As he walked to the stage, his shoes seemed to echo against the floor. Sandra sat up straighter, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Marcus took his position, took a deep breath, and began. But before he could finish his first line, Sterling's voice cut through the air. "Stop, stop, stop." He stood up, waving his hand dismissively. "This is painful to watch." He walked toward the stage, his expensive shoes clicking against the floor. "Kid, do you honestly think you have what it takes to be in this industry?" Marcus froze, his script trembling in his hands. Sterling continued, his voice dripping with contempt. "Look at you. You can barely hold your script straight. And that accent, are you even trying to sound professional?" He turned to the casting director. "Patricia, is this really the level of talent we're looking at?" Sandra started to rise from her seat, but Sterling wasn't finished. "Let me tell you something, kid. Hollywood isn't some fairy tale where dreams just come true. It's a business. And right now, you're wasting everyone's time." The room had fallen completely silent. Other parents pulled their children closer, looking away uncomfortably. Some pulled out their phones, already recording what was quickly becoming a viral moment in the making. Marcus stood there, trying to hold back tears as Sterling circled the stage like a predator. "Maybe stick to school plays, if they'll have you. Better yet, find a more realistic dream. Not everyone is cut out for this, and clearly." He gestured dismissively at Marcus. "You're not." The man in the baseball cap and sunglasses slowly stood up. Sterling was so focused on his cruel monologue that he didn't notice the movement. Marcus's vision was blurring with tears as Sterling continued his tirade. "I mean, honestly, what made you think you could dash? That's enough." The voice that cut through Sterling's rant was calm but carried unmistakable authority. Everyone turned toward its source. The man had removed his cap and sunglasses, revealing a face that made several people gasp. Chadwick Boseman stood there, his expression a mixture of disappointment and controlled anger. Sterling's face went pale as he recognized who had just witnessed his behavior. Chadwick walked forward, his presence transforming the tense studio air. Unlike Sterling's aggressive swagger, Boseman moved with the quiet dignity that had made him not just a star, but a role model. He stopped at the edge of the stage, looking up at Marcus with a gentle smile before turning to face Sterling. "Is this how you build up the next generation?" Chadwick's voice was measured but carried a weight that made Sterling take a step back. "By crushing a child's dreams? By mocking their accent? Their passion? Is this what you think leadership in our industry looks like?" Sterling attempted to recover, forcing a laugh that came out more like a nervous cough. "Come on, man, I'm just being honest. This industry needs thick skin. I'm doing the kid a favor." "A favor?" Chadwick's eyebrows raised slightly. "This industry," he continued, his voice growing stronger, "needs more voices, more stories, more perspectives. Not fewer. What it doesn't need is people who mistake cruelty for mentorship." He turned to address the entire room, his presence commanding attention without effort. "You want to know what I see when I look at this young man?" He gestured toward Marcus, who was still standing on stage, transfixed. "I see determination. I see potential. I see someone who had the courage to step up here and try. I see every kid who's ever been told they're not good enough, not right for the part, not what we're looking for." Sterling shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware of the phones recording everything. The video would later go viral, with millions of views within hours. Chadwick continued, each word deliberate and clear. "But you know what I don't see? I don't see someone who needs to tear down a child to feel powerful. I don't see someone who understands the responsibility we have as artists to lift each other up." He climbed onto the stage, standing beside Marcus. The contrast between them was striking, the established star and the young dreamer, connected by this moment that would change both their lives. "What's your name, young king?" Chadwick asked, his voice gentle. "Marcus," came the quiet reply. "Marcus," Chadwick repeated, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Don't let anyone dim your light. Not today, not ever. You know why? Because that light isn't just yours. It belongs to every kid out there who sees themselves in you, who dreams the same dreams." The casting director, Patricia, had stood up, her face flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and anger. "Mr. Sterling, I think we need to have a discussion about your role in this project. This behavior isn't just unprofessional. It's unacceptable." Sterling's face reddened as he realized the situation was slipping from his control. "Are you serious? I'm the star of this film. You can't daff." Actually, a new voice spoke up. Everyone turned to see Jeffrey Martinez, the studio's head of casting, who had entered during the commotion. "We can and we will. This behavior violates every principle we stand for as a studio." The room erupted in whispers as Sterling stormed toward the exit, but Chadwick wasn't finished. "Mr. Sterling," he called out, making the actor pause at the door. "Remember this moment. Remember how it feels to walk away knowing you tried to destroy something beautiful. Then ask yourself if that's the legacy you want to leave." Sterling's hand trembled on the door handle. For a moment, it seemed like he might turn back, might try to salvage something from this disaster. But pride won out, and he pushed through the door, letting it slam behind him. Chadwick turned back to Marcus, who was still trying to process everything that had happened. "Now," he said with a warm smile, "would you like to show us your scene? Because I have a feeling we're about to witness something special." The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Sandra, Marcus's mother, was wiping tears from her eyes, but now they were tears of gratitude and pride. Other parents watched in amazement as their children witnessed a master class in not just acting, but human dignity. Patricia stepped forward, clipboard forgotten in her hands. "Mr. Boseman, would you mind staying to watch the rest of the auditions? Your presence here." She gestured to the room, where hope had replaced fear. "It's made all the difference." Chadwick looked around at the faces of the children, seeing in each one the same dreams he'd once held. "It would be my honor," he replied, taking a seat in the front row. After all, he added with a smile that lit up the room, this is where the real magic happens. Not in the finished product, but in these moments of becoming. The studio buzzed with electric energy in the hours following the confrontation. Security escorted Sterling from the premises while studio executives huddled in emergency meetings. Outside, news vans started appearing as word spread about what had happened. The video of Sterling's meltdown and Chadwick's intervention was already spreading across social media platforms like wildfire. Marcus completed his audition with newfound confidence, delivering a performance that left everyone in the room speechless. Chadwick had stayed true to his word, watching each child perform with genuine interest and offering words of encouragement to every young actor. Patricia, the casting director, spent the afternoon making calls to damage control teams and Sterling's management. The studio's PR department worked overtime drafting statements, knowing this incident would dominate entertainment news cycles. Jeffrey Martinez, the head of casting, personally apologized to each family present, ensuring them that Sterling's behavior didn't reflect the studio's values. Sandra held Marcus close as they prepared to leave, both still processing the morning's events. Reporters attempted to catch them for interviews, but studio security created a protective barrier, ensuring their privacy. Other parents approached them, offering support and sharing their own stories of discrimination in the industry. Social media exploded with reactions. #StandWithMarcus started trending worldwide. Celebrity actors began sharing their own stories of facing discrimination early in their careers. Sterling's previous controversial moments resurfaced, painting a pattern of problematic behavior that had been ignored for too long. The studio's phone lines were flooded with calls from agents, managers, and other industry professionals either distancing themselves from Sterling or expressing interest in working with Marcus. Several prominent directors publicly announced they would never work with Sterling again. Sterling's management team scrambled to contain the damage, but their client had vanished, reportedly checking into a luxury hotel under an alias. His upcoming projects hung in limbo as producers and studios held emergency meetings to discuss their options. Meanwhile, Chadwick's actions drew widespread praise. Other actors and industry veterans commended his intervention, noting how he'd turned a moment of cruelty into a powerful lesson about responsibility and leadership in Hollywood. His measured response became a case study in how to handle discrimination and bullying in professional settings. Marcus returned home that evening to find their apartment building surrounded by news crews. Neighbors formed a protective barrier, helping Sandra and Marcus enter through a back entrance. Their phone rang constantly with calls from talent agencies and news organizations. The studio issued a formal statement by nightfall. James Sterling was officially removed from the project. They announced a comprehensive review of their casting practices and promised new guidelines to prevent similar incidents. More significantly, they revealed plans for a new initiative supporting young actors from diverse backgrounds, with Chadwick Boseman named as honorary chairman. The incident sparked a larger conversation about gatekeeping in Hollywood and the treatment of young actors, particularly those from minority communities. Industry veterans began sharing stories of similar experiences, leading to calls for systematic change in how auditions are conducted. Sandra sat with Marcus that night, helping him process the day's events. "You stood your ground," she whispered, holding him close. "Your daddy would be so proud." Marcus nodded, clutching the business card Chadwick had quietly slipped him before leaving, a direct line to his management team. The day ended with an unexpected call, Chadwick himself, checking in on Marcus. "Remember," his warm voice came through the speaker, "today wasn't about one bad moment. It was about showing the world what real strength looks like. You did that, young king. You did that just by being yourself." 3 weeks after the incident, James Sterling sat in his publicist's office, watching his career crumble. Major studios had dropped him from upcoming projects, and his agent wasn't returning calls. The viral video had surpassed 50 million views, with comment sections filled with public outrage. Sterling's reflection in the office window showed a changed man, unshaven, tired, his usual swagger replaced by a haunted look. The morning's trades carried another story about his replacement in the Warner Brothers film. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from former colleagues distancing themselves. Then came an unexpected call. Chadwick Boseman's team had reached out. They proposed a meeting, not for publicity, but for genuine dialogue. Sterling initially refused, his pride still stinging. But sitting alone in his Malibu home, watching his social media followers drop by thousands daily, he realized he needed this conversation. The meeting happened at a private room in the back of a small restaurant. Chadwick sat across from Sterling, his presence as commanding as ever. But instead of condemnation, he offered something Sterling hadn't expected: perspective. "You have two choices," Chadwick explained, his voice calm but firm. "You can let this moment define you, or you can use it to redefine yourself. The industry isn't punishing you, it's asking you to grow." Sterling listened as Chadwick shared stories of his own journey, of moments when others had believed in him despite his doubts. They talked for hours, about responsibility, about the power of words, about the legacy each actor leaves behind. Meanwhile, Marcus's life had transformed in unexpected ways. The studio had offered him not just the role he'd auditioned for, but a 3-picture development deal. His mother Sandra had been able to quit her second job, focusing solely on supporting her son's budding career. More importantly, Chadwick had kept his promise. He'd connected Marcus with acting coaches, mentors, and industry professionals who could guide him properly. The young boy's natural talent flourished under proper nurturing, free from the fear of judgment that Sterling had tried to instill. The studio's new initiative, now named the Next Generation program, began taking shape. With Chadwick's guidance, it focused on providing resources, training, and opportunities for young actors from underrepresented communities. Marcus became its unofficial ambassador, his story inspiring others to pursue their dreams. Sterling's transformation wasn't immediate, but it was sincere. He began by posting a lengthy apology video, not scripted by publicists, but raw and honest. He acknowledged his behavior, his prejudices, and his need to change. Then he took action, enrolling in diversity and sensitivity training, attending therapy, and reaching out to organizations that worked with young actors. 6 months after the incident, Sterling made his first public appearance, not at a red carpet event, but at a community theater program in South Los Angeles. He worked with young actors, sharing technical knowledge while learning humility. The media covered it skeptically at first, but as weeks turned into months, Sterling's dedication became evident. The industry watched his transformation with cautious optimism. Some saw it as a publicity stunt, but those who worked closely with him noticed real change. Sterling had discovered something he never expected. Teaching young actors brought him more fulfillment than starring in blockbusters ever had. 1 year to the day after the incident, Sterling received another invitation, this time for Marcus. The young actor was starring in his first major role, and he wanted Sterling to attend the premiere. The invitation came with a note: everyone deserves a second chance to be better. The premiere of Rising Stars at Grauman's Chinese Theater marked more than just Marcus's film debut. It represented a turning point in Hollywood's treatment of young actors, especially those from diverse backgrounds. The red carpet buzzed with energy as Marcus arrived, now 11 and carrying himself with quiet confidence. Sandra walked beside him, elegant in a designer gown, her hospital badge now permanently retired. They stopped for photos, Marcus's smile bright under the flashing cameras. Behind them came Chadwick Boseman, who had taken on an executive producer role in the film, ensuring the set remained a nurturing environment for its young star. But the night's biggest surprise came when James Sterling arrived. He hadn't been in front of cameras for months, focusing instead on his work with youth theater programs. He looked different, humbler, more grounded. When reporters thrust microphones toward him, he redirected attention to the young actors he'd been mentoring. Inside the theater, before the film began, Chadwick took the stage. "A year ago," he began, "we witnessed something that could have been just another sad story about Hollywood. Instead, it became a catalyst for change." He gestured to Marcus in the front row. "This young man showed us that talent doesn't need arrogance to shine. It needs nurturing, respect, and opportunity." The Next Generation program had already launched careers for dozens of young actors. Sterling, surprisingly, had become one of its most dedicated mentors. His experience had transformed him from a cautionary tale into an advocate for change. Marcus's performance in the film earned standing ovations. Critics praised his natural talent, but more importantly, they noted how the production had created a new standard for working with child actors. The film's success proved that protecting young talent and creating quality entertainment weren't mutually exclusive. After the screening, at the private reception, Sterling approached Marcus and Sandra. The room grew quiet, remembering their last encounter. But Marcus stepped forward, offering his hand. "Thank you for coming," he said simply.
Sterling knelt to meet his eyes, emotion visible on his face.
"Thank you for teaching me how to be better." Sandra watched the exchange, remembering her late husband's words about forgiveness being a form of strength. She saw it now in her son, not just talent, but wisdom beyond his years. Chadwick joined them, placing a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "This is what change looks like," he said, looking around the room. "Not just one story, but all of us writing a better story together." The evening ended with an announcement. The studio was expanding the Next Generation program nationwide. Sterling would help lead its mentorship initiative, using his experience to prevent others from making his mistakes. Marcus would serve as its youth ambassador, proving that dreams don't have to come at the cost of dignity. As Marcus left the theater that night, he paused to look at the stars above Hollywood Boulevard. His father's memory, Chadwick's guidance, Sterling's redemption, and his mother's unwavering support, all had played a part in his journey. "You know what this means?" Sandra asked, watching her son. Marcus nodded, thinking of all the other young dreamers out there. "It means the story's just beginning." And he was right. Because in Hollywood, like in life, the most powerful stories aren't about falling down. They're about how we help each other get back up. Sometimes it takes a moment of darkness to show us where the light needs to shine, and sometimes the greatest acts aren't performed on camera, but in the quiet moments when we choose to be better than we were yesterday. The headlines the next day wouldn't focus on box office numbers or critical reviews. Instead, they told a larger story, about an industry learning to protect its most vulnerable members, about the power of mentorship, and about how one young boy's courage had sparked a movement that would open doors for generations to come.